Hey there! Welcome to the Hidden Island, the one and only one-piece jazz lounge coasting here in the Calm Belt, bringing gentle grooves and tender tunes to me, you, and the deep all blue. Since we're new to this scene, I figure it's important to say that we are here to have some in-depth discussions on my personal favorite work of fiction, One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. For tonight's show, we'll be taking a dive into a story you folks may have heard before, a story that's very old and very important to our dear friends over on Fishman Island. Speaking of which, today some star members of the Fishman Island Swing Jazz Orchestra will be performing for us, and these guys are really great, so please welcome them onto the stage as we get started here. And most importantly, please make yourselves comfortable, because together we're going to explore a little theory of mine that I've been thinking about for quite a while now. Tell me folks, have you ever wondered, what was Joy Boy's promise all about? What is the true purpose of the Noah? And most importantly, what does it mean to be called Joy Boy? Today, I'm going to try to answer those questions, so please treat yourself to a drink or perhaps a snack. Sit back and relax, because this one's going to be a trip. First, a little preamble. As the story goes, 800 years ago a promise was made between a surface dweller who went by Joy Boy and the mermaid princess of the Fishman Kingdom, who we now only know by the name Poseidon. While on a surface level it was an oath made between the two of them, in reality it was more of a promise between Joy Boy and all of the Fishman people. A promise that would unfortunately come to be broken. In its place was left a prophecy stating that another would someday come to fulfill Joy Boy's promise in his place. Nowadays, only remnants of the vow between man and mermaid remain. An apology etched in stone, the old and moldy wreckage of an ancient ark, and a duty ultimately left unfulfilled. Our story picks up in the present day when our protagonists, the Straw Hat Pirates, arrive on Fishman Island. One of the first things to happen on their arrival, apart from a life-threatening nosebleed situation, they are delivered an ill omen from the island's resident fortune teller, Charlie. Her visions, which have never been wrong before, prove to be a major immediate obstacle for our beloved crew. In typical Straw Hat fashion, they want to befriend the locals, but the people instead want them captured and thrown in jail. Why? Well, when Charlie takes a peek into her crystal ball, she has a vision. Within she sees Luffy, yes, our Luffy, behind the destruction of their home, Fishman Island. Let's put a pin in this because this will be important later. A big battle, a couple flashbacks, and a whole lot of conflict having passed, Luffy actually saves the island from assured destruction rather than bringing it any harm. Elsewhere, Miss Nico Robin stumbles upon Joy Boy's apology letter written on a poneglyph deep in the sea forest just outside. Upon asking King Neptune about this mysterious apology, she learns from him a few important details that we're going to talk about today. First, she learns that the apology, while its details are still unclear, is part of a legend that has been passed down the royal bloodline for generations. This same legend has given the royal family the crucial task of protecting the Noah, that massive ark resting on the seabed, for yet unknown reasons. That is, quote, their side of the promise. Second, she learns from Neptune that there is a promised day in which Joy Boy's side of the deal will be fulfilled. Then and only then will the true purpose of the Noah be made clear. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get into some theory territory, if you don't mind. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, the whole point of this video is going to be to explore three major concepts and answer some important questions about each. Number 1, Joy Boy's promise to the Fishman people. 2, the true purpose of the Noah. And 3, what it means to bear the title Joy Boy. As far as I can tell, the first two ideas go hand in hand, but are surprisingly strongly connected with the third. Moreover, I think that our man Oda has been doing a lot of meticulous setup here ever since the Fishman Island arc, and with some important elements going as far back as even Arlong Park. But folks, I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get right into it. So, I strongly believe that Charlie's vision and Joy Boy's promise to Poseidon are one and the same. I think that Joy Boy himself planned on destroying Fishman Island 800 years ago. But hold on, guys, there's more to it than just that. I'm not here to put some bad mojo on Joy Boy's name. Let's get more specific. Luffy will destroy Fishman Island, and it will ultimately be for the benefit of the Fishman people. This idea may not be anything new, but with some recent evidence and a new perspective on the events of the Fishman Island arc, it seems clearer than ever that Luffy will be returning to that island, or at least its people, one last time before it's gone for good. But why? Why would he destroy the home of those he vowed to protect? Well, that's because Fishman Island is not a home. It's a prison. It's no secret that the Fishmen have been rejected by surface dwellers for nearly all of recorded history. According to Neptune himself, long ago Fishmen gathered deep down in the only part of the ocean where daylight would shine. They sought the daylight even in the depths, that precious sunlight, but why do that when there is a perfectly good sun up above the water? I can only guess that they were forced down there, and such fitting imagery Oda used to demonstrate this. The only kingdom, the only land that the fishmen can call their own, is inside a giant fishbowl, and their queen, a goldfish mermaid, longing to escape that bowl and explore the vast, beautiful world outside. The unfortunate truth is that even if they were to escape, the world would not welcome them. A world where slavery, discrimination, and irrational hatred await up above is no better than the glass walls that restrain them to their tiny island. Let's break off this for a second. A major theme of One Piece as a whole is the never-ending battle between imprisoned peoples and their captors, the struggle for freedom in a world that seeks to dominate them. Naturally, our hero Luffy is a great liberator. Ever since the beginning of One Piece, he has freed the people around him from their bondage both figuratively and literally. In the story, Luffy first meets Kobe, who is held captive by Alvida. Luffy answers that with a show of force and heroism by sending Alvida flying away and giving Kobe the chance to finally pursue his dream. His first crewmate, Zoro, is first encountered as a prisoner set to be executed, only for Luffy to set him free as well. Textbook example here, by the way. Luffy later calls Usopp to the sea, giving him the chance to experience all these grand adventures in real-life fairy tales, and through this, maybe one day, Usopp can return home and share his fantastical stories again with a girl who's too sickly to leave her own room. Sanji, a man with a dream as lofty as Luffy's, is bound to the Baratier out of a self-imposed feeling of debt and obligation to his mentor Zeph. Only after Luffy defends their dear restaurant from Krieg and shows Sanji the importance of chasing your dreams does he gain the conviction to leave his tiny eatery on the sea for the bigger world outside. Bear with me, fellows, I'll get to Nami. As the story goes on and grows in scale, so does the world, and so do the prisons. A massive Isle of Judgment surrounded by colossal metal gates, a maximum security prison complex of biblical proportions right on the other side. Let's not forget the tragedies of the lost children trapped and experimented on in Punk Hazard, or the Dressrosa people kept in their birdcage, blissfully ignorant of the horrors below them. Or even the Kozuki loyalists held in the Udon prison mine, a prison built within a country both geographically and politically isolated from the rest of the world. The smoggy, polluted air crying for the wishes of their late shogun's dream to open the borders to the world outside. The seas of One Piece themselves, the symbol of freedom, are all gated in by a massive continental wall on both sides. Even the freest man on those seas, Goldie Roger, the king of the pirates, died in captivity. And then there's Nami. Nami and Arlong Park. I saved this one for last because I feel that it's the most important to our chat today. After giving Arlong Park and Fishman Island a thorough reread, I'm convinced on at least this part of the theory. The number of parallels and callbacks are staggering. If there's any one part of Arlong Park that has planted the seeds for the story to come, it's when Luffy discovers Nami's room. It is a room filled to the brim with maps of the ocean. It looks like a study, rather nice at first glance, probably a dream room for any aspiring cartographer or expert navigator. At first glance, he doesn't understand what the room is, then he takes a closer look. A lonely little desk, a blood-encrusted pen, the endless stacks of paper. Then he learns straight from Arlong the harrowing truth. This was Nami's room, the room she's been cooped up in for the better part of a decade. That blood was Nami's. The dried tears on the desk were Nami's. All those stacks of maps done in only the span of 8 years? How long was she stuck in here, working and toiling away, to be used as a tool by a man who saw her as inferior and then to be lied to and discarded? Luffy was sitting in Nami's prison. He wasn't in just any room. This room was the thing standing between her and freedom. And ladies and gentlemen, here is where the fate of Fishman Island is made abundantly clear to me. Upon fully grasping the situation, Luffy says the following. I finally know how to help her now. This room that she never wanted to be in, I can't allow it to exist. I'll erase this place down to the very last trace. Now there's different translations of this, but the general theme is this. When there is a prison, a room or a wall standing in the way of someone's freedom, when there is an oppressor keeping Luffy's comrades down, or a cage locking his family away, when there's a flag of subjugation flying in the face of Luffy's loved ones, he will burn it down. He will break and shatter and destroy that wall, that prison, that cage, whatever or whoever it may be. And as we established before, Fishman Island is a prison. It's a room that the Fishman people never wanted to be in, and thus I think that room will be destroyed by Luffy in order to free its people from over 800 years of continued suffering. What circumstances will lead up to that moment, I couldn't tell you. It could be Luffy destroying the Red Line, as some of the passionate fans have guessed, a wonderful theory by the way, or it could be a more direct and intentional means than that. Maybe Shirahoshi is captured. Imu seems to know of her true identity. If I had to guess, I'd say that when Luffy arrives on Laugh Tale and learns the history of the world, maybe it'll be just the motivation he needs to make a round trip back to the Ryugu Kingdom. After all, it's the only place currently flying the Straw Hat flag. The children there even sport straw hats in honor of Luffy. Makes me think of Luffy placing his hat on Nami's head, a symbol of their camaraderie in a moment of her weakness, a moment where she needed his help to break free, and if I'm on the right track here, when the sad truth behind that undersea kingdom is made clear, Luffy will finally know how to help them as well. I think Joy Boy wanted the same thing as Luffy. His promise to the Mermaid Princess of 800 years ago was a promise of freedom, a promise to show her the surface. Maybe even a promise to show her what a real forest looks like. If Joy Boy and Luffy are anything alike, and I'd like to think they are, then I would imagine they would both come to the same conclusion. Free the fishmen and erase all traces of their unfortunate history, returning it to zero, not unlike tattooing a sun over the hoof of the celestial dragons. Unfortunately, Joy Boy failed in whatever conflict or crusade occurred back then, leaving a world up above that was still not yet ready for the Fishman people. Joy Boy's failure meant that he ultimately could not carry out the promise he made to Poseidon, so he writes her an apology. And in that apology, he describes a man who will one day arrive to fulfill his promise in his place, and he asks her and her people to guard the Noah until that day comes. Until the day comes that someone will free them from their prison down below, destroy the walls keeping them in, and bring them to the surface above, a surface with real trees and a real sun. So in summary, I theorize that 800 years ago, Joy Boy promised Poseidon to show her the world above and free her people from their enclosure in the darkness of the ocean, returning their history to zero. Joy Boy tragically failed in making that possible and left the task up to an unnamed successor. He asks the princess for a favor, to protect the Noah until that fated person arrives. In the present, Luffy arrives, and Charlie, a fortune teller with a perfect track record, predicts Luffy will destroy their island. Despite Luffy actually saving the island from destruction, Luffy will at some point return to take up the role of Joy Boy, simultaneously fulfilling both his and Charlie's prophecy by destroying Fishman Island, the room they never wanted to be in. But that leaves the Noah, this massive wooden ark placed conveniently nearby Joy Boy's poneglyph. What do we know about it? What is it for? Well, for starters, we can safely guess that it was built during the blank century, probably before the apology was written. We know it's practically the size of a small island, has massive chains attached to the front of it, and has been protected by not only the fishmen, but also by sea kings for more than 800 years. Based on context, it was intended for a specific use that cannot be utilized until Joy Boy's end of the bargain is complete. I'm sure some of you folks watching have figured it out by now, but the Noah's true purpose is likely the most obvious one. What is an ark, or any other ship for that matter, used for? Transportation. In the Bible, we have the story of Noah's Ark. In that story, God warns Noah of a world-engulfing flood and spares him, his family, and all animals by ordering him to build a massive ark. On that ship, they can ride out the flood and come into a world anew. Obviously, Oda is drawing from this story, and given the context, it makes a lot more sense. If Fishman Island were to be destroyed, just imagine the scenery. Rushing water flooding in, falling debris, nothing separating the people inside from the dark ocean and monstrous creatures outside. Where would they go? How would they escape? Well, just so happens there's a giant ark right outside, big enough to fit everyone in. A giant ark with massive chains attached, made to be pulled by sea kings, a feat we've seen demonstrated before, by the way. Even more convenient that their mermaid princess, Shirahoshi, has inherited Poseidon's power, the power to command those very sea kings, a power which she currently does not know how to properly use. According to her mother, Queen Otohime, once in every few centuries, a mermaid is born with the ability to understand and communicate with even the mighty sea kings. It is further told that one will appear with the power to guide that mermaid, to guide Shirahoshi, to show her the right path, the correct way to use her ability, and it is said when that time comes, a great change will come upon the world. She goes on to say that, if used wrongly, the power that Shirahoshi holds is great enough to sink the entire world beneath the waves. It is made clear here that Poseidon's power is not the power of a weapon. There's a right and wrong way to use it. Despite Poseidon being called an ancient weapon, using her power as such is implied to be the wrong way. So, then, what's the right way? As I've been hinting at, I believe Poseidon's power is meant to command the Sea Kings for the purpose of transporting the Noah, and, by extension, the Fishman people to the surface where they can finally live under the same sun as everyone else. This is the reason that the Sea Kings, when speaking to Roger, mentioned the birth of the mermaid princess in 10 years, as well as another sovereign born to a distant sea. As Roger said, we were too early. This is the same reason why the Sea Kings protected the Noah from Luffy and expressed worry in it being harmed before the promised time. After all, how else would everyone safely escape? This reason is likely also why the only two major on-screen examples we see of Charlie's fortune-telling are specifically regarding the birth of Shirahoshi and Luffy's destruction of Fishman Island. There are two halves to this promise, two jobs to be done. Joy Boy and Poseidon, Luffy and Shirahoshi, and thus all our pieces fall into place. Joy Boy's promise, the promise to destroy the prison they'd been forced into and bring them to the surface above. Joy Boy's apology for the failure to live up to his end of the deal, followed by a prophecy that someone else will come and do it in his stead. And the Noah, the only ship that can take the whole island's population to the surface when all is said and done. Its true purpose, a ship designed to be pulled by the Sea Kings that Poseidon commands. When the promised day of the Great Flood comes, this ark is the ship they will ride to freedom, to a new world under the one true sun. For all you lovely people who are still with me, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Allow me to break character for a moment, but this channel is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. The Hidden Island, as well as all the amazing and dedicated people in the One Piece fandom, are my all blue, so I just wanted to share my thanks before I move on to the last part of our discussion today. If you're enjoying yourself so far, please like and subscribe to show your support, and I'll make sure to fulfill my end of the promise by bringing you guys more videos just like this one. Anyways, let's get back on topic. Folks, all of the things I've discussed up until now are the reasons that I personally love the Fishman Island arc. It's one of those stories that gets better the longer the series goes on. I honestly think it has a lot in common with the Skypiea arc in that way, and despite some minor issues here and there, is a very worthwhile reread. I think it gets a bad rap, to be honest. Sure, it does retread a lot of Arlong Park's story beats, but that's part of the point. Arlong Park's story ended, Kokoyashi Village was liberated. Fishman Island's story didn't really end, they're not yet freed. While Hody was the villain on the surface, the system that created him and what he represents are the true villains of the arc, and those villains have yet to be defeated. Trust me, I have a lot more to say about this arc, but I'll save that for another day, my friends. In the meantime, I'd like to wrap up this chat with one last segment. Remember in the beginning I mentioned a third topic I wanted to cover during our show today? Let's talk about that. This part is going to be heavy on the theory and guessing end of things per se, just a heads up, but when I was researching this topic, I stumbled upon a line dropped during Robin's conversation with Neptune that set off an entire chain of speculation in my mind. Robin brings up an additional question related to Neptune's daughter, Shirahoshi. Robin speaks of the poneglyph that she read on Skypiea, which gave to her the location of one of the so-called ancient weapons, that location being Fishman Island. She goes further and asks if the mermaid princess of old was known by the same name presumably described on that poneglyph, Poseidon. Neptune gives a straight answer, specifying, and quote, "For whatever reason, in the ancient world there existed 3 great weapons with power enough to destroy the world. 3 ancient weapons, each bearing the name of a god, Pluton, Uranus, and Poseidon." And as it turns out, Neptune's very own daughter is one of the 3, bearing the power of Poseidon. Now, interestingly enough, Shirahoshi is referred to as Poseidon directly, and not just as the possessor of Poseidon's power. And Neptune's mention of the weapons each bearing the name of a god implies that the gods' names came before the weapons did, which goes on to further tell us that, at least in Poseidon's case, the name is more of a title than an actual name. My guess is that the mermaid princess of long ago was not actually named Poseidon, just like someone's will, a huge theme of the One Piece story, that quote-unquote weapon's power can be inherited, and likewise so can its title. And much like any other title, it usually comes with a job. As Otohime put it, there is a right and wrong way to use Shirahoshi's power. There is a true purpose for her abilities. A king's job is to command a kingdom. A captain's job is to command his crew. So, in this example, Poseidon is a title that Shirahoshi bears, a title that comes with the job of guiding the Sea Kings on the promised day. This got me thinking. Joy Boy. We've had weirder names show up in the story before, but this one has always stuck out to me. Why? Well, it always felt to me like a nickname you'd give a pirate, such as Blackbeard, Red Hair, or Straw Hat. Joy Boy, at least as far as I can tell, was similarly an epithet given to an important man, a man called Joy Boy, the same way that Luffy is called Straw Hat. But guys, pirate epithets tend to highlight a prominent physical characteristic of their bearer. Joy Boy, however, seems to be a little bit more abstract. Was he a guy who smiled a lot, or was he just known for bringing joy to others around him? For writing purposes, this has been left intentionally unclear, but recent chapters have pointed me ever so slightly in a direction that I'd like to explore. As of 2021, very recently in the Wano arc, Kaido defeated Luffy on top of Onigashima. As Luffy is falling into the ocean, he states, "You couldn't be Joy Boy either, it seems." With this sentence, it becomes clear to me that Joy Boy was not only an epithet, but just like Poseidon, it is a title that one is to bear. Unlike Poseidon, however, it may not be a title that you're born into, but possibly something that you have to earn or grow into, maybe something akin to becoming Pirate King. Imu, the secret ruler of the world government, seems to be aware of Shirahoshi's true power. They have a picture of her specifically in Pangaea Castle's chambers, Joy Boy has always been spoken of in the same breath as the ancient weapons, and interestingly, Emu likewise has pictures scattered about on the floor of both Luffy and Blackbeard. Candidates for the title of Joy Boy, perhaps? Marshall D. Teach may seem to think so about himself at the very least. Looking back at the Battle of Marine Ford, Whitebeard makes sure to state directly to Teach that he's not the man Roger is waiting for. Roger was waiting for someone, the man he learned about at Laugh Tale, or just like the Fishman people and the people of Wano are waiting for a Joy Boy to return. In other words, Whitebeard is saying that Teach is not the man who will bear that title. So let's say this idea is on the right track. Let's say that Joy Boy is not a simple name, but rather a title to bear. A title to be inherited centuries later by a special person for a special purpose, just like the ancient weapons. Well, then what is Joy Boy's job? What is that special purpose? Here's what I think. It's like I said before, a king commands his kingdom, a captain commands his crew, and Joy Boy, well, he commands the ancient weapons. I believe that Joy Boy is the title given to the one person capable of guiding the ancient weapons toward their intended purpose. Not a surprise then that Kaido, someone who is looking to acquire those same weapons, is simultaneously looking for Joy Boy. Oftentimes, when speaking of the ancient weapons, there seems to be a recurring theme of power being placed in the wrong hands. Pluton, one of the other ancient weapons, is a form of ship hidden somewhere in Alabasta. The exact location of it was purposefully denied to Crocodile by Robin because she knew he was unfit to use something so devastatingly powerful. Later on in the Water 7 arc, we find that Tom had a blueprint of Pluton in his possession, which was for the sole purpose of building a second Pluton to counter the first, just in case. In the climax of Tom's story, Frankie shouts in regret of having made all his battleships, to which Tom, the same man safeguarding Pluton's blueprints, exclaims that a ship is neither good or evil, that one must love their creations anyway, that it's wrong to blame the ships for how other people choose to use them. It has been made clear that there is a right and wrong way to use the ancient weapons' powers. In fact, they may not even be weapons at all. As implied by Rayleigh in the Odin flashback, they were only called weapons by those in the blank century. Pluton and Poseidon up until now have been depicted as weapons capable of destroying the world, but in a different context may be just as capable of saving it. Maybe the ancient weapons are not simply weapons or tools to be used, but rather powers to be guided for the sake of protecting others. Sea kings that can destroy islands can also pull a massive arc used for evacuation and saving people. Battleships and pirate vessels, while just soulless hunks of wood and metal to some, can be near and dear companions to others. Or even something as minor as a little girl with a knack for map making. In the hands of evil, she is something to be used, but in the hands of the right person, an indispensable friend and the sole navigator of the Pirate King. I believe Joy Boy is the right person. I believe Joy Boy is the person who the ancient weapons were meant for. And when the original Joy Boy failed, those ancient weapons were hidden away, awaiting the day, just like the Fishmen and just like the people of Wano, for a new Joy Boy to arrive, to guide them and show them the right path, and bring a great change upon the world, to bring them into a world anew, a world full of joy. And that about wraps it up for today, folks. I personally think this is an idea that makes a lot of sense, and I have a hunch that Oda is kind of going in this direction. But we'll see how it plays out. Let me know what you guys think. But anyway, my lovely audience, thank you for landing here on the Hidden Island. We hope you've enjoyed the show today, because we sure enjoyed putting it on. Until next time, have a beautiful day, a pleasant night, and a wonderful romance dawn.